Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. Today's story comes from someone who bravely shared their deeply personal experience with us anonymously. It's a story about love, betrayal, and unexpected strength found in the face of heartbreak. These are real stories, raw and unfiltered, shared to offer connection and perhaps a little understanding in the often complex world of relationships. Before we begin, if you find yourself drawn into these real-life narratives, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. Sharing this video also helps us reach more people who might find solace or resonance in these stories. Your support means the world and allows us to continue bringing these voices to you. Now let's listen to this story unfold. It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? When I think back to the beginning, to Sarah and me, it's like watching a movie of someone else's life. Everything was so vibrant, so full of promise. We met in that chaotic whirlwind of youth at a friend's party, the kind where the music's too loud and everyone's laughing too easily, but somehow, amidst all that noise, we found each other. I remember her laugh first, a bright, ringing sound that cut through the din and made me turn my head. And then there she was, eyes sparkling, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. She was captivating. That's the only word that truly fits. Captivating in a way I'd never experienced before and haven't since. We were young, barely out of college, and the world stretched out before us, an unwritten book waiting to be filled with our adventures. Everything was new, exciting. Dating Sarah was like stepping into a constant stream of sunshine. She was spontaneous, full of energy, always eager to try new things. I was a bit more reserved, perhaps more grounded. We were different in many ways, but those differences, initially, were what drew us together. She brought a lightness into my life, a sense of adventure I hadn't known I was missing. And I suppose, offered her stability, a safe harbor in her sometimes stormy seas. Or at least that's how it felt back then. The early years of our relationship were idyllic. Is that too cliché? Maybe. But it's the truth. We were inseparable. Weekends were spent exploring hidden cafes, hiking trails we'd never heard of, losing ourselves in bookstores and art galleries. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing dreams, fears, silly anecdotes from our childhoods. There was a sense of effortless connection, a feeling that we just understood each other on a level deeper than words. It was intoxicating, that feeling of being truly seen, truly known, and loved for exactly who you were. I remember thinking countless times that I'd found my person. My soulmate, if you believe in such things. And at that time, I desperately wanted to believe. Marriage felt like the natural next step, a seamless progression from the beautiful life we were already building. The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and family. We said our vows under a canopy of trees, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, creating dappled patterns on the ground. It felt magical, almost unreal. Looking into Sarah's eyes as we exchanged rings, I felt an overwhelming sense of certainty. This was it. This was forever. We were embarking on this journey together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever life threw our way. We were a team, invincible, our love a fortress against the world. The first few years of marriage were blissful. We bought a small house, a fixer-upper that we poured our hearts and souls into. Weekends were filled with DIY projects, painting walls, planting a garden, laughing at our mistakes and celebrating our small victories. We built a home, not just a house, but a space filled with warmth, laughter, and love. We hosted dinner parties, game nights, movie marathons. Our friends envied us, I think. We were the couple everyone aspired to be. Happy, content, deeply in love. We traveled too. Not extravagant, luxurious trips, but adventures nonetheless. Road trips along the coast, camping under the stars, exploring bustling city markets and quiet countryside villages. Each experience brought us closer, creating shared memories that wove themselves into the fabric of our relationship. We were building a life together, brick by brick, moment by moment, and each brick, each moment felt precious, irreplaceable. I cherished everything about her. Her infectious optimism, her unwavering belief in me, even when I doubted myself. Her kindness, her generosity, her ability to find beauty in the simplest of things. I loved the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, the way she'd hum softly to herself when she was concentrating, the way she'd reach for my hand in the movie theater, even after years together. These small, everyday gestures, these tiny moments of connection, were the things that built the foundation of our love, a foundation I believed was unbreakable. Looking back, it all seems so perfect, almost too perfect. Was that happiness really as sustainable as I thought? Or was I just blinded by love, by the dream of what I wanted our life to be? Perhaps I was too complacent, too comfortable in the bubble of our seemingly perfect world. Perhaps I failed to notice the subtle shifts, the tiny cracks that were beginning to appear beneath the surface. Or maybe, just maybe, I chose not to see them. Because admitting that something might be wrong, that our perfect world might not be so perfect after all, that was a thought I wasn't ready to face. Not then. It wasn't a sudden earthquake, not a dramatic explosion that shattered our seemingly solid foundation. It was more like erosion. A slow, insidious wearing away, almost imperceptible at first. Like the tide slowly pulling grains of sand from the beach, day after day, until one day you realize the landscape has irrevocably changed. The changes in Sarah were subtle, at least initially. Looking back, I can see them now, clear as day, but at the time, I dismissed them, rationalized them, told myself I was just being paranoid, imagining things. Denial, I suppose, is a powerful drug. It started with little things. A slight shift in her routine. She used to be an early riser, always eager to start the day even on weekends. Suddenly, she started sleeping in, lingering in bed long after I was up and making coffee. Not a big deal, right? Everyone gets tired sometimes. But it became a pattern. Weekends turned into days spent in separate rooms, me puttering around the house, her lost in her phone or laptop, the door to the spare bedroom, which had become her makeshift office, often closed. Conversations became different. They used to flow so easily like a natural stream. Now they felt forced, stilted. If I asked about her day, I'd get short, clipped answers. Fine. Busy. Same old. The spark, the enthusiasm, the genuine interest in sharing her life with me, seemed to have dimmed. She became less forthcoming, more guarded. It was like talking to a stranger, someone polite but distant, not the woman I'd shared my life with for years. Intimacy, too, began to wane. Not just physical intimacy, though that definitely decreased. But the emotional intimacy, the closeness, the feeling of being connected on a deeper level, that also started to fade. We used to talk about everything, share our hopes, our fears, our vulnerabilities. Now, those conversations became rare, almost non-existent. It was like she was building a wall between us, brick by silent brick, and I didn't know how to stop her. Or perhaps I was too afraid to try. I remember trying to initiate conversations to bridge the growing gap. "Is everything okay, Sarah?" I'd ask tentatively, trying to sound casual, as if I hadn't noticed the shift, as if I wasn't worried sick. "Of course everything's fine," she'd reply, her voice flat, her eyes avoiding mine. "Why wouldn't it be?" And then she'd change the subject, abruptly moving on to something mundane, something trivial, anything to avoid delving into the real issue, the elephant in the room that was growing bigger and heavier with each passing day. I started to feel lonely. Incredibly, profoundly lonely. Even when we were in the same room, sitting on the same couch, we felt miles apart. It was like living with a ghost, a shadow of the vibrant, loving woman I had married. I missed her laughter, her warmth, her touch. I missed the easy companionship, the feeling of being a team, of facing the world together. It felt like we were drifting further and further apart, like two ships passing in the night, heading in opposite directions. I tried to rationalize it, to find explanations that didn't involve the unthinkable. Maybe she was stressed at work. Maybe she was going through a phase. Maybe it was just a temporary dip, a natural ebb and flow in the tide of our relationship. Relationships have ups and downs, right? Every couple goes through rough patches. This was just a rough patch. That's what I told myself over and over again, trying to convince myself that everything was going to be okay, that we'd get through this, that our love was strong enough to weather any storm. But deep down, a nagging unease was starting to creep in. A seed of doubt, planted in the fertile ground of my subconscious, was beginning to germinate. The signs were there, undeniable if I allowed myself to see them. The secrecy with her phone, always held face down, always locked. The late nights at work, becoming increasingly frequent, with vague explanations and a lack of detail. The subtle defensiveness when I asked simple questions about her day. These were not the actions of a woman who was simply stressed or going through a phase. These were the actions of someone hiding something. And yet, I still resisted the thought. The thought that Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I had built my life with, the woman I trusted implicitly, could be capable of betrayal. It was too painful to contemplate, too devastating to even consider. So I pushed it down, buried it deep, hoping it would just go away. Hoping that I was wrong, that my fears were unfounded, that everything would eventually go back to the way it was. But the unease lingered, a persistent hum beneath the surface of my denial, a premonition of something darker, something more painful, waiting just around the corner. The unease, that persistent hum, grew louder, more insistent. It was no longer something I could ignore, something I could easily dismiss as paranoia or stress. The subtle signs had become less subtle, more blatant, and the rationalizations I had clung to were starting to crumble under the weight of reality. The late nights at work were becoming a weekly, almost nightly occurrence. "Just a big project," she'd say, her voice tired, her eyes still avoiding mine. "Deadlines, you know how it is." And I'd nod, pretending to understand, pretending to believe her, even though a cold knot of suspicion was tightening in my stomach. Her phone became an extension of her hand, constantly in her possession, always locked, always face down. She'd take it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, which was unusual to say the least. If I walked into the room while she was using it, she'd quickly minimize the screen or turn it off, a flicker of something, guilt, in her eyes before she'd plaster on a forced smile. These were not the actions of someone with nothing to hide. These were the actions of someone carefully guarding a secret. The secrecy extended beyond her phone. She became vague about her whereabouts, her plans. "Out with friends," she'd say when I asked about her weekend plans, but when I pressed for details, names, places, she'd become evasive, deflective. "Just catching up with people," she'd mumble, her gaze drifting away. "You wouldn't know them." And I wouldn't push further, not because I believed her, but because I was afraid of what I might uncover, afraid of confirming the growing suspicion that was gnawing at my insides. The change in her demeanor was perhaps the most telling of all. The spark, the vibrancy, the joy that had once defined Sarah, seemed to have been extinguished. She became withdrawn, irritable, easily agitated. She'd snap at me for minor things, for things I'd always done, things that had never bothered her before. It was like she was looking for reasons to be angry, reasons to pick a fight, as if she was trying to push me away, to create distance between us. Or perhaps she was projecting her own guilt onto me, subconsciously blaming me for something she herself was doing. The suspicion, once a faint whisper, now became a persistent voice in my head, growing louder, more insistent with each passing day. Infidelity. The word, once unthinkable, now echoed in my thoughts, a dark possibility that I could no longer ignore. Could Sarah be cheating on me? Could she be seeing someone else? The thought was like a physical blow, making my chest tighten, my breath catch in my throat. It was too painful, too devastating to even contemplate, and yet I couldn't shake it off. The signs were too numerous, too consistent to be mere coincidence. I started to look for evidence, subtle at first, almost unconsciously. Checking her phone when she left it unattended for a few seconds, quickly scrolling through recent calls and messages, finding nothing, or at least, nothing overtly incriminating. Checking her car mileage, comparing it to her supposed commute, noticing discrepancies, unexplained miles that fueled my suspicion further. Looking for receipts in her purse, hoping to find clues, anything that could confirm or deny my growing fears. Felt wrong. Snooping through her personal belongings, invading her privacy, it wasn't something I was proud of. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd do. But desperation can drive you to do things you never thought you were capable of. The fear of the unknown, the agonizing uncertainty, was pushing me to the brink. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I needed to either confirm my suspicions and face the devastating reality, or disprove them and finally find some peace of mind. The limbo, the agonizing uncertainty, was becoming unbearable. The internal conflict was tearing me apart. Part of me desperately wanted to find nothing, to prove myself wrong, to go back to the blissful ignorance of before, to believe that everything was still okay, that our love was still intact. But another part of me, a darker, more pragmatic part, knew that something was deeply wrong, that the truth, however painful, was necessary. I was caught in a tug-of-war between hope and fear, between denial and reality, and the strain was starting to take its toll. I was losing sleep, losing appetite, losing myself in a spiral of anxiety and suspicion. I was becoming a shadow of my former self, consumed by the gnawing uncertainty, desperately searching for answers, for any glimmer of truth that could either shatter my world completely, or, against all odds, restore it. The subtle snooping wasn't enough. It was like scratching the surface of a deep wound, offering momentary relief but failing to address the underlying infection. The suspicion had taken root, grown stronger, and now demanded more than furtive glances and half-hearted searches. I needed concrete answers, irrefutable proof, one way or another. The uncertainty was suffocating me, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I couldn't continue living in this agonizing limbo. I had to find the truth, even if it meant shattering the illusion of our perfect life forever. I started with her phone. I knew it was the most likely source of information, the digital Pandora's box that held the secrets she was so carefully guarding. But it was always locked, protected by a passcode I didn't know. For weeks I tried to guess it: birthdays, anniversaries, pet names, anything that might be remotely plausible, but nothing worked. She was too careful, too guarded. But I was becoming desperate. One evening, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs to take a shower. It was a fleeting opportunity, a window of time that might never present itself again. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of guilt and adrenaline coursing through my veins. I hesitated for a moment, the voice of reason whispering in my ear, reminding me of her privacy, of the trust we were supposed to have. But the louder voice, the voice of suspicion, the voice of desperation, drowned out all other considerations. I grabbed her phone, my hands trembling slightly, and quickly tried the most obvious passcode: 1234. Ridiculous, I know, but in that moment of desperation I was grasping at straws. And to my utter disbelief, it unlocked. I stared at the screen dumbfounded. 1234? After all the elaborate theories, all the failed attempts, it was something so simple, so obvious. It was almost insulting. But there it was, her phone, unlocked, open for me to explore. I felt a surge of guilt, instantly followed by a wave of morbid curiosity. I knew I shouldn't do it, that it was a betrayal of trust, a violation of her privacy. But I couldn't stop myself. The pull of the unknown was too strong, the need for answers too overwhelming. I started with text messages. Scrolling through her recent conversations, my eyes scanning for anything suspicious. Most of them were mundane, work-related, chats with friends about trivial things. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize, appearing frequently in her message list. Mark. The messages were deleted, of course, but the name itself was enough to trigger alarm bells. I clicked on the name, hoping against hope that there might be something, anything left behind. And there it was, a single message, unsent, still lingering in the draft folder. Can't wait to see you tonight. Thinking of you all day. Red heart. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Can't wait to see you tonight. Thinking of you all day. These were not the words of a platonic friend. These were the words of a lover. The red heart emoji at the end was like a final, damning confirmation. My breath hitched in my throat, my hands started to shake uncontrollably. It was real. My suspicion, my fear, it was all real. Sarah was cheating on me. I scrolled through her call history, finding the same name, Mark, appearing frequently, often late at night or early in the morning. I checked her photos, quickly scanning through recent images, finding nothing overtly incriminating, but a few pictures of her looking unusually happy, radiant, in places I didn't recognize, places she hadn't mentioned going to. The pieces were starting to fall into place, forming a horrifying picture of betrayal and deceit. I felt sick to my stomach, a wave of nausea washing over me. My head was spinning, my thoughts racing, a chaotic jumble of pain, anger, and disbelief. It couldn't be true. Just couldn't be. But the evidence was there, staring me in the face, undeniable, irrefutable. My wife, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was having an affair. I quickly deleted the unsent message, cleared the draft folder, and locked her phone again, placing it back exactly where I had found it, my heart pounding, my hands still shaking. I felt dirty, violated, guilty for snooping, but at the same time, strangely relieved. Relieved to finally have an answer, to finally know the truth, however painful it might be. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by a harsh, brutal reality. My world, the perfect world we had built together, was crumbling around me, and I was standing in the wreckage, stunned, heartbroken, and utterly lost. The clue was found, the trail followed, and it led to a place I never wanted to go, a place of betrayal and unimaginable pain. The unsent message, the phone records, the vague explanations, it was all circumstantial, wasn't it? A nagging voice of denial still whispered in my ear, clinging to the last vestiges of hope. Maybe I was misinterpreting things. Maybe Mark was just a colleague, a friend, and the message was taken out of context. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions, letting my suspicion run wild, creating a narrative in my head that wasn't actually true. Desperate, I grasped at these flimsy straws of hope, clinging to the possibility, however remote, that I was wrong. But deep down I knew. I knew the truth even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. The feeling in my gut, the cold knot of dread, it was too strong, too persistent to be ignored. And the evidence, though circumstantial, was mounting, pointing in one direction and one direction only. Infidelity. Betrayal. The words echoed in my mind, chilling and devastating. I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof, something that would leave no room for doubt, no space for denial. I couldn't live with this agonizing uncertainty any longer. I needed to face the truth, however painful it might be, and deal with the consequences. So, I decided to follow her. It felt like something out of a bad movie, something I never imagined myself doing. But desperation, as I'd learned, could push you to do things you never thought possible. The following Friday, she told me she had a late meeting at work. Big presentation on Monday, she explained, her voice flat, her eyes still avoiding mine. Need to finalize everything. The same old story, the same tired excuse. But this time I was ready. This time I wasn't going to just accept it, to passively watch her slip further and further away. This time I was going to find out the truth. I waited until she left for work, then gave her a reasonable head start before getting into my car and following her. It felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body, a character in a drama I hadn't chosen to be a part of. I kept a safe distance, careful not to be seen, my heart pounding in my chest, adrenaline coursing through my veins. She didn't go to her office. Instead, she drove to a different part of town, a neighborhood I didn't recognize, a residential area with tree-lined streets and quiet cul-de-sacs. She pulled into the driveway of a house, a small, unassuming bungalow, and parked. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't her office. This wasn't a colleague's house. This was something else. I parked down the street out of sight and watched. She got out of her car, looking around nervously, then quickly walked towards the house and rang the doorbell. A man answered the door, a man I didn't recognize, a man who was definitely not a colleague. Mark. The name flashed in my mind, the name from her phone, the name that had haunted my thoughts for weeks. They embraced at the door, a long, lingering hug, not the kind of hug you give a friend or a colleague. They held each other close, their bodies pressed together, and then they went inside, closing the door behind them. I sat in my car, frozen, numb, staring at the house, my mind blank, my heart shattered into a million pieces. It was real. It was happening. The irrefutable evidence, the confirmation I had desperately sought, was now staring me in the face. My wife was inside that house with another man. She was cheating on me. The shock was immense, overwhelming, like a physical blow that knocked the wind out of me. Pain, sharp and searing, ripped through my chest, followed by a wave of anger, hot and furious. Disbelief, denial, confusion, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within me, threatening to drown me in their intensity. It felt like the world was tilting, shifting, losing its stability, its familiar contours. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, was being ripped away, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty and pain. Trust, the foundation of our relationship, the bedrock of our marriage, had been completely shattered. Broken into a million irreparable fragments, scattered by the winds of betrayal. The woman I loved, the woman I had vowed to spend my life with, had deceived me, lied to me, betrayed me in the most profound and devastating way imaginable. The pain was unbearable, a crushing weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to even exist. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, watching the house, my mind racing, my emotions raw and exposed. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision, tears of pain, of anger, of grief, for the love we had lost, for the future that had been stolen, for the life that had been irrevocably changed. The harsh truth had finally arrived, crashing down on me with the force of a tidal wave, leaving me broken, devastated, and utterly lost in the wreckage of my shattered dreams. The evidence was irrefutable, the affair undeniable, and my world as I knew it was gone forever. Driving home that night felt like navigating through a dense fog, my vision blurred by tears, my mind numb with shock. The images from earlier, Sarah entering that house, the embrace at the door, replayed in my mind on an endless loop, each repetition twisting the knife deeper into my heart. The silence in our house was deafening, heavy with unspoken accusations and the weight of betrayal. She arrived home later, feigning tiredness, offering a perfunctory kiss, her eyes still avoiding mine. The charade, the performance, it was almost insulting, adding another layer of pain to the already unbearable situation. I knew I couldn't pretend any longer. I couldn't keep living this lie, this agonizing charade of normalcy, while the truth festered beneath the surface, poisoning everything. Confrontation was inevitable. It was the only way to break through the wall of deceit she had built, the only way to force the truth into the open, however painful it might be. But I was terrified. Terrified of the words that would be spoken, terrified of the emotions that would be unleashed, terrified of the finality of it all. I waited until the next morning, until after breakfast, when we were both sitting at the kitchen table, the remnants of a strained, silent meal between us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice, trying to control the tremor that was running through me. "Sarah," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes wary, a flicker of apprehension in their depths. "Talk about what?" she asked, her voice guarded, defensive. As if she didn't know. As if she wasn't aware of the chasm that had opened up between us, the unspoken accusations hanging heavy in the air. "About everything," I said, my voice gaining a little strength, a little resolve. "About us. About what's been happening." She sighed, a long, exasperated sigh, and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms defensively. "There's nothing to talk about," she said, her voice flat, dismissive. "Everything is fine." "Don't," I pleaded, my voice cracking with emotion. "Please don't insult my intelligence. Don't pretend that everything is fine when we both know it's not." "I know, Sarah. I know about him." The word hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of panic crossing her face, quickly replaced by a mask of defiance. "Him? Who are you talking about?" she asked, feigning ignorance, but her voice betrayed her, trembling slightly. "Mark," I said, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. "Mark from work? Mark who you had a late meeting with last night? Mark whose house you spent the evening at?" Silence descended upon us, thick and heavy, broken only by the frantic pounding of my heart in my ears. She stared at me, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fear. For a moment she said nothing, frozen, caught in the headlights of my accusation. Then the denial came, as predictable as it was pathetic. "You're wrong," she said, her voice weak, unconvincing. "You're imagining things. Mark is just a colleague. We were just working late on the presentation." "Working late? At his house?" I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm, with bitter disappointment. "Is that what you call it now? Working late?" She hesitated for a moment, searching for an explanation, a lie that could somehow salvage the situation, but there was none. The truth was out, exposed, undeniable. And finally the facade crumbled. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes filled with tears, and the confession came, a torrent of words, a jumbled mess of excuses, justifications, and half-hearted apologies. "Okay, fine, yes," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "It happened. But it's not what you think. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice hollow, devoid of emotion. "Cheating on your husband is complicated?" "It just happened," she stammered, avoiding my gaze, looking down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "We were just friends and then, things just happened. It wasn't planned. It just happened." "Things just happened?" I asked, my voice rising, anger starting to boil beneath the surface. "You just happened to spend the night at another man's house? You just happened to tell him you couldn't wait to see him and that you were thinking of him all day? Is that what just happened means to you, Sarah?" The questioning went on, relentless, painful, digging deeper and deeper into the raw wound of betrayal. The details emerged, fragmented, agonizing, each piece of information adding to the devastation. It had been going on for months. Months of lies, months of deceit, months of betrayal, all hidden beneath the veneer of our seemingly normal life. The confrontation was brutal, emotionally draining, leaving us both raw and exposed, stripped bare of all illusions, facing the harsh, devastating reality of what our marriage had become. A confession had been made, the truth revealed, and the turning point had arrived, marking the beginning of the end, the irreversible fracture in the foundation of everything we had built together. The aftermath of the confession was a wasteland. A barren landscape of shattered trust, raw emotions, and unimaginable pain. The world I knew, the life I had built, felt like it had been nuked, leaving behind only ashes and rubble. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by restless nights filled with replays of the confrontation, the images of Sarah with another man, the agonizing questions that swirled endlessly in my mind. Food lost its taste, appetite vanished, and my body felt heavy, leaden, as if weighed down by the sheer enormity of the heartbreak. Everywhere I looked, everything I saw reminded me of her, of us, of what we had lost. Our home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, now felt like a prison, filled with ghosts of happy memories that mocked my present pain. The photos on the walls, the mementos on the shelves, the furniture we had chosen together, every object seemed to whisper of betrayal, of deceit, of the love that had turned into a lie. The emotional pain was relentless, a constant ache in my chest, a dull throbbing that wouldn't subside. It was like a physical wound, raw and exposed, constantly being reopened, preventing any semblance of healing. Sorrow, deep and profound, washed over me in waves, threatening to drown me in its depths. Loneliness, a chilling emptiness, gnawed at my insides, even when I was surrounded by people, by friends who tried to offer comfort and support. I felt utterly alone, isolated in my pain, as if no one could truly understand the depth of my heartbreak. Nightmares plagued my sleep, vivid, disturbing dreams filled with images of Sarah and Mark, intertwined, laughing, mocking me with their happiness. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, the remnants of the nightmare clinging to me, blurring the lines between reality and fantasy, making the pain even more acute. Even during the day, waking moments felt like a waking nightmare, the reality of the betrayal constantly hovering over me, casting a dark shadow over everything. The loss was immense, not just the loss of Sarah but the loss of everything we had shared, everything we had built together. The loss of trust, the loss of intimacy, the loss of the future we had planned, the loss of the dream we had so carefully nurtured. It felt like grieving a death, the death of our relationship, the death of the person I thought I knew, the death of a part of myself that was inextricably linked to her. The haunting was constant. The memories of our beautiful years, the happy moments, the shared laughter, the intimate conversations, they played in my mind like a cruel movie reel, contrasting sharply with the present reality of betrayal and heartbreak. The contrast was agonizing, highlighting the stark difference between the illusion of our perfect past and the brutal truth of our shattered present. It was like being haunted by a ghost, the ghost of our former love, constantly reminding me of what I had lost, of what had been stolen from me. I struggled to function, to go through the motions of daily life. Work became a blur, tasks became meaningless, and concentration was impossible. I felt like a zombie going through the motions but devoid of life, devoid of joy, devoid of any real emotion except pain. Simple tasks, things I used to do without thinking, now felt like monumental efforts. Getting out of bed, showering, eating, even just getting dressed, required a conscious effort, a Herculean will to push through the crushing weight of despair. The physical consequences of the heartbreak were also taking their toll. Weight loss, fatigue, headaches, muscle aches, my body was mirroring the emotional turmoil within. It was as if my body itself was grieving, shutting down, unable to cope with the immense stress and pain. I felt fragile, vulnerable, broken, both emotionally and physically, teetering on the edge of collapse. The heartbreak was consuming me, body and soul, leaving me hollowed out, empty, a shell of my former self, struggling to navigate through the wasteland of my shattered life. The wasteland of heartbreak felt endless, a desolate expanse stretching out in all directions, offering no escape, no solace. But even in the deepest despair, even in the face of unimaginable pain, life, in its relentless momentum, forces you to move forward, to make decisions, to choose a path, however uncertain, however daunting it may seem. The question was, what path to choose? What decisions to make in the wreckage of my shattered marriage? Separation. Divorce. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality, with the irreversible ending of everything we had built together. The thought of it was terrifying, overwhelming, but also strangely liberating. Liberating from the suffocating weight of lies, from the agonizing charade of a broken relationship, from the constant pain of betrayal. But the path to separation, to divorce, was fraught with its own challenges, its own uncertainties, its own pain. Reconciliation. Could we even consider it? After everything that had happened, after the betrayal, the lies, the deep wound to trust, was reconciliation even possible? A small, fragile voice of hope whispered in my ear, reminding me of the beautiful years, the love we had once shared, the memories that still held a flicker of warmth. Could we rebuild? Could we forgive? Could we somehow salvage something from the wreckage? The thought was tempting, a siren song promising a return to normalcy, to the comfort of the familiar, but also deeply unsettling. Could I ever truly trust her again? Could I ever erase the images, the pain, the betrayal from my mind? We talked, or rather we attempted to talk. Stilted, awkward conversations filled with silences, accusations and tears. She expressed remorse, regret, claimed it was a mistake, begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. But her words felt hollow, empty, devoid of sincerity. The trust was gone, irretrievably broken, and her apologies, however heartfelt they might have been, couldn't magically mend the shattered pieces of our relationship. My emotions were a chaotic battlefield, reason warring with emotion, hope clashing with despair. Part of me, the rational part, the logical part, knew that separation was the only sensible option. The trust was gone, the foundation was cracked, and trying to rebuild on such shaky ground seemed futile, destined to collapse again. But another part of me, the emotional part, the vulnerable part, yearned for reconciliation, for a return to the love we had once shared, for the comfort of the familiar, for the hope of a future, however uncertain. The decision was agonizing, tearing me apart from the inside out. Sleep became even more elusive, replaced by endless nights spent weighing the pros and cons, analyzing every word, every gesture, every possibility. Friends and family offered advice, well-meaning but often conflicting, adding to the confusion, to the weight of the decision. Some urged me to leave, to cut my losses, to start anew, to find someone who truly deserved my love. Others encouraged me to forgive, to give her another chance, to fight for our marriage, to believe in the power of love and reconciliation. The weight of the decision was crushing, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe, hard to think clearly. It felt like holding the fate of our lives in my hands, knowing that whatever choice I made, it would have profound and lasting consequences, not just for me but for both of us. The future stretched out before me, uncertain, daunting, filled with both hope and fear, depending on the path I chose. Ultimately, the decision came down to one fundamental question. Could I forgive? Could I truly forgive Sarah for what she had done? Could I erase the betrayal from my mind, rebuild trust from the ashes, and move forward with her, knowing what had happened, knowing the pain she had inflicted? And the answer, after weeks of agonizing soul-searching, was a resounding no. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too profound, the trust too irrevocably shattered. Reconciliation, however tempting, felt like a fantasy, a denial of the harsh reality of our broken relationship. Separation, divorce, however painful, felt like the only honest, the only realistic path forward, the only way to begin the long and arduous journey of healing and recovery. The decision was made, the choice was clear, and the difficult, painful process of dismantling our life together, of starting anew, was about to begin. The decision to separate, to divorce, was just the first step, a painful but necessary amputation to stop the spread of emotional infection. The real journey, the long and arduous path of recovery and healing, was just beginning. It felt like climbing a mountain, steep and treacherous, shrouded in mist, with no clear summit in sight. Each step forward was a struggle, each breath a conscious effort, but with each small step, however faltering, however painful, I was moving further away from the wasteland of heartbreak, towards the possibility of a brighter future. The initial days, weeks, months after the separation were a blur of legal paperwork, logistical nightmares, and raw, unfiltered emotions. Dividing our lives, disentangling our finances, separating our possessions, it felt like dismantling a lifetime of shared memories, reducing our beautiful past to spreadsheets and legal documents. The process was cold, clinical, and deeply dehumanizing, adding another layer of pain to the already overwhelming heartbreak. Support became crucial, a lifeline in the storm of emotions. Family and friends rallied around me, offering shoulders to cry on, ears to listen, and hearts filled with compassion and understanding. Their presence, their unwavering support, was a balm to my wounded soul, reminding me that I was not alone, that I was loved, that I was worthy of healing and happiness. Their encouragement, their gentle nudges, helped me to take those first tentative steps forward, to face each day however daunting it may seem. Therapy became another essential tool in my recovery arsenal. Talking to a professional, someone objective and unbiased, provided a safe space to process my emotions, to unravel the tangled threads of my thoughts, to understand the complexities of the betrayal and its impact on my life. Therapy helped me to confront my pain, to acknowledge my anger, to grieve my loss, and to begin the slow, gradual process of healing. It was like having a guide on that treacherous mountain, someone to help navigate the difficult terrain, to point out hidden dangers, and to offer encouragement when the climb felt too steep. Self-care became a priority, no longer a luxury but a necessity for survival. Simple things I had often neglected in the past, became anchors in the storm. Exercise, long walks in nature, healthy eating, getting enough sleep, these basic acts of self-compassion became rituals of healing, nurturing my body and mind, rebuilding my strength, both physical and emotional. Rediscovering hobbies, things I had once enjoyed but had set aside during the marriage, became a source of joy, a reminder of my own identity, separate from the relationship, separate from the heartbreak. Reading, listening to music, spending time in nature, these small pleasures became moments of respite, islands of calm in the turbulent sea of my emotions. Forgiveness. The word felt like a mountain in itself, impossibly high, impossibly steep. Forgiving Sarah felt like an act of betrayal to myself, to the pain she had inflicted, to the trust she had shattered. But therapy helped me to understand that forgiveness wasn't about condoning her actions, it wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about releasing the bitterness, the resentment, the anger that was poisoning my own soul, preventing me from moving forward, from healing, from finding peace. Forgiveness, I learned, was not for her, it was for me. It was about freeing myself from the chains of resentment, about reclaiming my own emotional freedom. Acceptance. Accepting the truth of what had happened, accepting the reality of the broken marriage, accepting the pain of betrayal. It was a slow, gradual process, filled with setbacks and moments of despair. But with each step forward, with each small act of self-care, with each therapy session, with each conversation with a supportive friend, the acceptance grew slowly, tentatively, like a fragile seedling pushing through the cracked earth. Acceptance didn't mean erasing the pain, it didn't mean forgetting what had happened, but it meant making peace with the past, acknowledging the hurt, and choosing to move forward, to build a new future, a future where heartbreak no longer defined me, a future filled with hope and possibility. The climb was still arduous, the summit still distant, but with each step I was gaining strength, resilience, and a glimmer of hope for the future, a future where healing was possible, where recovery was within reach, where happiness, however different it might look from what I had once imagined, was still a possibility. Looking back now from a vantage point of distance and healing, the pain of the infidelity still lingers, a faint ache in my heart, a scar that serves as a reminder of the past. But the rawness, the intensity, the all-consuming despair has faded, replaced by a sense of resilience, of strength, of hard-won wisdom. The mountain of heartbreak, once seemingly insurmountable, has been climbed, and from its summit, I can see a new landscape unfolding, a landscape filled with both challenges and opportunities, a landscape where healing and growth are not just possibilities but realities. The most profound lesson I learned from this painful experience is the importance of self-worth. In the aftermath of the betrayal, in the face of the lies and deceit, it was easy to question my own value, to wonder what I had done wrong, to blame myself for the breakdown of the marriage. But through therapy, through self-reflection, through the support of loved ones, I came to realize that infidelity is not a reflection of my worth, it is a reflection of the betrayer's choices, their flaws, their insecurities. My worth is inherent, intrinsic, unchangeable, regardless of someone else's actions. This realization was liberating, empowering, allowing me to reclaim my self-esteem, to rebuild my confidence, to move forward with a renewed sense of self-acceptance. Another crucial lesson was the importance of communication, honesty, and vulnerability in a relationship. The cracks in our marriage, the subtle signs of change, they were there, but they were ignored, dismissed, rationalized, buried beneath a veneer of complacency. Open, honest communication, addressing issues as they arise, expressing vulnerabilities, sharing fears and insecurities, these are the cornerstones of a healthy, resilient relationship. Had we been more open, more honest with each other, perhaps things would have been different. Perhaps the betrayal could have been prevented. Perhaps our marriage could have been saved. But perhaps is a dangerous word, a slippery slope of what-ifs and regrets. The past cannot be changed, but the future can be shaped by the lessons learned. For anyone going through a similar experience, facing the pain of infidelity, the devastation of betrayal, my advice is this. Allow yourself to grieve. Don't suppress your emotions, don't minimize your pain, don't try to be strong when you feel broken. Allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of emotions, the sorrow, the anger, the confusion, the despair. Grief is a necessary process, a vital step on the path to healing. Seek support. Don't isolate yourself in your pain. Reach out to family, friends, therapists, support groups, anyone who can offer a listening ear, a compassionate heart, and a helping hand. You are not alone. Many others have walked this path before you, and many others will walk it after you. There is strength in shared experience, solace in knowing you are not alone. Focus on self-care. Nurture your body, mind, and soul. Prioritize your well-being, your health, your happiness. Engage in activities that bring you joy, that replenish your energy, that remind you of your own worth and value. Exercise, eat well, sleep enough, reconnect with hobbies, spend time in nature, practice mindfulness, whatever works for you, whatever nourishes your soul. And finally, have hope. Even in the darkest depths of despair, even in the face of unimaginable pain, hope is the flickering light that guides you forward. Believe in your own resilience, believe in your capacity to heal, believe in the possibility of a brighter future. The path to recovery is long and arduous, but it is possible. Healing is possible. Happiness is possible. A new future filled with love, trust, and genuine connection is waiting for you on the other side of the heartbreak. The storm will pass, the sun will shine again, and you will emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The future is unwritten, full of possibilities, and it is yours to create. This story, like many others we share, reminds us of the complexities of relationships and the strength it takes to navigate life's challenges. Thank you for listening and for being a part of this community where we share and learn together. If you resonated with this story or have your own experiences to share, please feel free to do so anonymously in the comments below. Remember, you are not alone in navigating these difficult parts of life. And thank you for being here. We hope to see you in the next video.